Well, good morning and welcome to the walk-off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford, normally joined by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack, but as most of you are aware, it's been a big month for the dude. He has been moving and dealing with some family stuff all at once. It's been a lot on his plate. So he is missing today's show. It was either I go solo or we just not do it. So I figured that what the heck, let's do a solo episode. No big deal. I did just want to reach out to all of the grounds crew there and apologize for our weird schedule this month. I know we have missed some shows. We've had a few audio problems, so on and so forth. The big thing has been Adam Mack is so crazy busy, and I had a really good talk with him yesterday. And honestly, I felt bad for the dude because he was talking about how he feels like he's letting me down and he's letting you folks down. And I just wanted to reiterate to him that life happens, shit happens, and most people are going to understand. And all I can promise to you folks, the grounds crew who has been with us for so long, and if you are new to the channel, please believe we are consistent normally. So we are going to get back to our regular schedule, our Tuesday mailbag, our Friday show, our long toss, our interviews, our MLB Mondays. I don't think we've missed any of that if you're on Patreon, but it has been a weird schedule. So our sincere apologies, but please know we are trying, and we do guarantee we're going to get back to the baseball consistency that you are used to. Now, we do have a pretty darn big show to get to today, despite the fact that Adam can't join us. So, San Diego, the Padres finally leave town. I am so sick of hearing about the Padres and how they're a better team than their record shows. But salvaged the series with a win yesterday. The Canadian invasion into Seattle starts today. We're going to see piles of folks from Vancouver and BC and Alberta and Saskatchewan make the trek down to cheer on the Blue Jays there. So we'll get into it. Kirk, Alejandro, and Dalton Varsho, they've had rough seasons, man. Definitely part of the reason why this Toronto Blue Jays offense has not been as potent as we have seen in 2022 and 2021. So we will get into that and some possible trade transactions with the trade deadline looming that might be able to bolster this lineup. Addison Barger and Davis Schneider, my goodness, these two continue to produce in AAA. We'll do a quick look at what they're up to and if we can see them coming to the Jays' big team sometime before the end of the season. It's possible. And then we'll do a quick look at the AL East as there is a new king atop of the division. Before we do that, I do wish to make an announcement here about a live show. So, Adam and I have been doing live podcasts in Alberta for the last couple months. One in Edmonton, one in Calgary. And they've gone so well and have been so fun to meet some of you folks who have followed us along just to talk baseball with some of the grounds crew. You know, add faces to the handles, the internet handles that you always normally communicate with. So, it's been a lot of fun. Adam and I are planning to go to Toronto, but probably not until next spring. But this is what has just happened. I landed a comedy gig in Hamilton in September. So I talked to Adam because he can't make the trek, and he said, "You know what, man? Maybe you should reach out to some of one of the people that we have on the show quite often and run something that way." And so we're going to do that. So this is what's happening. Listen up, Toronto. September 10th, that is a Sunday. We are going to be doing a live long toss. So this is how it breaks down. Locked On Blue Jays, our good friend Craig Ballard, is going to be teaming up with me to host the show called Baseball Town. We're calling it. It's going to be at the Comedy Bar on Danforth. Tickets go on sale right now, early bird tickets. So if you get your early bird tickets, you are going to save yourself $5. And we have some major guests appearing on this long toss. So again, Locked On Blue Jays, the walk-off, we're collabing. We're doing a live long toss, Craig Ballard and I. We have so far as guests, good friend of the show, and I would say the king of Blue Jays podcasts, Johnny G of Gate 14 will be joining us. We have Blake Murphy coming down to the show to be a panelist. Of course, he's from Jays Talk Plus and Sportsnet. He's been on the show numerous times. Thrilled to have Blake Murphy. And folks, that's not all. Okay? Our panel is going to grow. We have some irons in the fire. We have one for sure from, let's just say, a member of the Toronto Blue Jays 40-man roster who guarantees if he's still on the team, will come down and do this. I'm not going to give you the name, but he was on Locked On Blue Jays with Craig, one of the interviews Craig did. So if you use your deductive reasoning, you might be able to figure out who that is. Nonetheless, very, very excited to be bringing Baseball Town to Toronto. It's going to be so much fun. Please feel free to get your tickets now. Early bird pricing until August 1st. We will have a ticket link in the comment section. Again, Baseball Town, Locked On Blue Jays, the walk-off, bringing a live podcast, bringing a live long toss, the panel show that everyone can't wait for every Sunday, bringing it live to Toronto. I'm so excited about this. So, yeah, spread the word, everybody. Okay, housekeeping done. Let's get into it. Bye-bye, Padres. And let me tell you, I am so done with dealing with the San Diego "they are better than this" rhetoric. Man, that was annoying. To have every Padre pundit come on Blue Jays shows and just talk about how this is such a great team, and I get it, okay? Listen, this is a Padres team that has Fernando Tatis Jr., Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth. Their payroll is north of $250 million. This probably is a better team than their record says. It darn well should be. Everyone can't wait to talk about the 42 run differential. They have the third best run differential in the National League. And I know I'm being shitty here. It's been a while since I've heard this sort of defense of a bad team. You know, a bad team so staunchly defended. Like, they're 10 games back of the division, everybody. They're 8 games back of the wild card. I understand that maybe they have underperformed, but let's reel it in a little bit, San Diego Padres analysts, all right? I just feel like this is a team who didn't come together for more reasons than just underperformance for 100 games. Chris Bassett. Wow. I don't think Chris Bassett gets enough credit, everybody. I know that if you look at his numbers for ERA, he's pretty much what we expected, right? A pretty darn solid number 3. He goes about his business a little different than I had expected. I didn't know enough about Chris Bassett coming into the season. He very much is a dude who is all or none, right? He'll give you 3 or 4 dominant starts followed by something that isn't quite as desirable, and that's why his ERA is around a 4. It normally comes from like one game where he allows 5 runs in 3 innings and doesn't get to the 5th, and that balloons everything up. But man, yesterday, what he provided to Toronto Blue Jays, trying to avoid a sweep, a very disappointing game 2 where Jose Barrios pitched an absolute gem, only allowing 2 runs, and the Blue Jays bats just went cold. Listen, we've seen this a few times. This was one of those Blue Jays bats go cold for 48 hour stints. We saw one in Detroit when they got no hit. They actually won that Detroit series and wound up winning one game on 5 hits in 48 hours. They were no hit on the Saturday, then Sunday only provided 5 hits, and Danny Jansen's heroics won the Detroit series. Kind of lucky to squeeze a win out in this Padres series with how the offense was going, but I mean, I'll tell you, man, the defense and the pitching sure has continued to be the weapon of choice from this Toronto Blue Jays team. And for the most part, it's working, right? It's not the prettiest baseball, but the Jays are 97 games into the season, and they're kind of where they're supposed to be. I mean, they have underperformed, and I think we were all hoping they'd be a little closer to the top spot in the division, but they're only 5.5 games back of Baltimore. They play the Orioles 6 more times before the end of the season. They're only 4.5 back of the Rays for second spot and within striking distance. This was something that at the beginning of July I didn't see coming. I know they showed the stats or the standings from the beginning of July on the broadcast yesterday, and the Blue Jays, I think it was 11 games back of the Rays. So they have cut that in half in less than a month, I should say. Who knows what happens? I'm a little doubtful that they actually catch the Orioles. That said, I give it a 20 to 30% chance. Like, it is not impossible by any stretch of the imaginations, but the Bats need to get it together if that's going to be the case. This was seriously a tough series loss. Piles of opportunities not had. A lot of guys in runner. I mean, this has been the Blue Jays' MO all season long. Too many runners in scoring position, not cashed in, and that was kind of what did them in again in this San Diego series. But they did get that final win, and now the Blue Jays head to Seattle. Oh, Seattle, our home and native land, right? Turning that into Canada. The Blue Jays fans coming in droves. So the Seattle Mariners are currently 48 and 48. Canada invades. And this rivalry, which was pretty much, let's face it, Seattle Mariners, Toronto Blue Jays rivalry was pretty much non-existent even 10 years ago. It wasn't like it is. I was just down there for the All-Star break, and let me tell you, folks, there is some serious animosity towards Blue Jays fans. The amount of Mariners fans who, in good fun, but you could still feel they meant it, that would come up to me and be like, "Oh man, we sure put you in your place last year. The Blue Jays suck. The Blue Jays aren't going to do anything. We've got your number." So this is wild card redemption. That's what this series is all about. It's also a series about sticking a fork in the Seattle Mariners. They need to decide if they are going to be buyers or sellers right away here. Okay. They are currently a game back of the Los Angeles Angels. They're a few games back of the Red Sox and the Yankees for the final wild card spot. If the Blue Jays can take 2 of 3 and help push that record to a place where the management and the ownership of the Seattle Mariners in the next 10 days are going to be trepidatious to buy. That is good. That is just good news for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's good news for the Toronto Blue Jays for a few reasons. Number one, the Seattle Mariners have some very interesting pieces on expiring contracts that they would probably wind up moving at the deadline if they decide to go the seller's route. Teoscar Hernandez, friend of the Toronto Blue Jays, is number one at the top of that list. He would sure look good in a Blue Jays uniform with the way he hits lefty pitching, considering no one in this lineup does that. There's some really good bullpen pieces, too, that could work out. But forget about even if the Mariners and the Jays make as a trade partner. Having one more team out of that buyer's market is huge. Okay, because the price at the trade deadline, we already saw what happened last year. It gets inflated. You're going to need to pay to get these players on expiring contracts, and you're going to need to pay probably pretty big, especially for guys who are going to move the needle. So just having Seattle off the books as a buyer would lower that competition, or that's the dream. This series has become such a mark it on your calendar type of series for Toronto Blue Jays fans. And I remember the first time I ever went to Seattle to watch the Jays and the Mariners, and it wasn't near the Canadian show up that it is now. But even when I went, it was July 1st. So the Blue Jays were playing their Canada Game Series in Seattle. This would have been 2008. And some of you might remember that John Gibbons, friend of the show, two-time manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, had just been fired June 20th. And they had brought back Cito Gaston, World Series manager for the 92-93 Toronto Blue Jays, and the first black manager to hoist a World Series up. So pretty big deal there. It was a celebration in Toronto, especially considering that 2018 was so god awful. So we were all excited Cito was back. My brother and I drove from Calgary. We drove from Grand Prairie, Alberta, all the way to Seattle to catch this series. We got to see Roy Halladay pitch. We made a giant poster that said Cito strikes back. We got on TV. It was so much fun watching Roy Halladay get the win that series. Of course, the Jays lost 2 of 3 while we were there, but seeing Roy Halladay live, I mean, I'm still, especially with how things played out with him, RIP Roy, pretty darn cool to see one of the best to ever pitch in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform do it live. So we were very glad to do that. My brother and I got into some trouble that series too. There's probably about 20% Jays fans at that point. If you go to a Mariners Jays series these days, it is for sure 50-50, but it hadn't quite hit that level. And it was Canada Day, so it was more than normal. And I remember all these Mariner fans wound up taking us out afterwards, and they were like, "Where are all these Canadians coming from?" We were trying to explain, seriously, like, Vancouver's very close, because they think, everyone in the U.S., it doesn't matter if you're right on the border, Canada's just so far away, right? So my brother and I, this was 2008. This was before the internet was super easy to maneuver. It was slower. Dial up was a thing. But my brother and I spent all this time at the Seattle Library on these computers looking up stuff that we could shit talk the Mariners players about. One of the players wound up having his number taken from him by his manager, so we had that. Anyways, we're yelling at all these Mariners players, and the Mariners fans around us just thought it was so funny that we had gone to so much trouble to be like, "Achiro, you're the greatest player ever, but your dad probably pushed you too hard in your childhood," right? Like, just silly little stuff like that. But they wound up taking us out, and we got right ripped. It was a pretty good time. But on the way back, we were driving through the parks, and I was young, I was stupid. We had hotboxed my car in the hotel parking lot the night before. So we were driving through Jasper, and we get pulled over. Anyone who's driven through those national parks in Alberta know that when you're driving through the mountains, the speed limit goes from 70 to 90 back and forth. And so they caught us going 90 in a 70. And as soon as they pull us over, the cop's like, "Oh, your car smells like weed." They then had 2 more cop cars pull up. I guess they thought that we were like actually hauling real weight. I don't know what they thought. But they pulled our car apart. They ripped off the panels of the door. They looked everywhere for this weed, and they wound up finding like literally a joint and a half. They were so choked. And of course, I was choked too, because they made me go to court for this. The judge threw it out. He was so mad. He was like, "I can't believe you guys didn't just throw this." Anyways, this is why weed is legal in Canada. I really went off the rails here. I was not planning on going down this route. Anyways, Seattle versus Toronto. The game's, of course, on Pacific time, so it's going to be a late one for all of you Eastern folks. But this is a big series. Definitely excited to watch the Blue Jays fans go crazy in Seattle. You know that they are going to. I do wish to give, before we move on here to Kirk and Varsho, a little bit of love needed for Tim Mesa. Some Tim Mesa appreciation here. Friend of the show, if you haven't seen the Tim Mesa interview, definitely type in YouTube Tim Mesa walk off, because it is a doozy. He talks with us for like 45 minutes about his Tommy John rehab and just how it was to rehab through COVID and coming off of the IL and being separated from his team and just how mentally strong Tim Mayza is, you see it on the mound now. And it's funny to watch what he has progressed into, which is one of the best left-handed pitchers in all of baseball. Tim Mayza has now gone 18 straight appearances without allowing an earned run. That's the longest active streak in Major League Baseball. And on top of that, no inherited runs allowed either since May 15th. 19 runners, 0 scored. That is so impressive. He has been one of the most effective relievers in baseball over the last 2 months and really all season long. I mean, Tim Mayza has a 1.5 wins above replacement right now, an ERA of 1.01, a whip of 1.00. He's allowing 1 hit and walk an inning. The dude has been nails. Big tip of the hat to Tim Mayza. Keep it up, buddy. Definitely a high leverage stud at the back end of that Blue Jays bullpen. You gotta love to see it. Okay, folks. Alejandro Kirk and Dalton Varsho have had some really bad seasons. They are struggling offensively without a doubt. And it's been kind of the silver lining on these two is that Alejandro Kirk has been putting up incredible defensive numbers behind the plate. His blocking and his framing are elite. Dalton Varsho, exact same thing in the outfield, has shored up that outfield offense, or my apologies, definitely not that. The outfield defense to a crazy level. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but the defensive runs saved by the Blue Jays in center field are at 24 for the season. 24 for center field. Like, that leads baseball by so much, it's not even funny. I think the next closest was 18 or 17, something like that. I haven't looked up the stat in a couple weeks, but just trust that this Blue Jays outfield is dominant when it comes to preventing runs. Now, you can't say the same about Varsho at the plate. He is in a month-long of a stinking slump. It has been brutal, and he hasn't been all that hot all season long. Batting average of 210, OPS under 700. If you're not getting your OPS into the 700s, that's not contributing to the offense, that's to say the least. Alejandro Kirk has been a little hot lately. I know we watched a dinger and a 2-for-3 night yesterday, I think it was for him. Anyways, really great to see Kirky showing a little bit of life. That said, both have been miserable. So, my question to you folks, the grounds crew, is, and I bring this up after watching Blair and Barker yesterday afternoon, and it was so interesting to hear the two of them say that they think it's very possible that when the Blue Jays make their moves at the trade deadline, that Dalton Varsho might not be a full-time player anymore, which, considering the trade they made to get him, is pretty shocking. But you know what? I will give credit to the front office if they go this direction in understanding how important 2023 is, and that maybe Varsho has been an incredible disappointment so far, and that they do have him under contract for another 3+ years, and that this is a project that maybe can wait until the offseason as long as they can get a bat in there that can hit left-handed pitching, something that almost no one in this freaking lineup does. So my question is, at this trade deadline, what do you think the possibilities of this front office actually going out and getting a bat, an outfielder, that would take away substantial playing time from Dalton Varsho? And I'm going to get really crazy here. What do you think the chances are of the Blue Jays going out and getting a veteran catcher, which would definitely take time away from Alejandro Kirk? Now, there is definitely an argument to be made that that would not be a bad thing, especially if that veteran catcher they bring in can do anything at the plate. So here is a wild and crazy idea that my buddy and I were texting about yesterday. Now, this is just two fans being fun, throwing out a ridiculous outside of the box thought. What if the Toronto Blue Jays go to the Kansas City Royals and check in on Sal Perez? Listen, Sal Perez, one of the best catchers in baseball. This is a dude who is probably on track for a Hall of Fame induction. He's going to earn $20 million for 2023 and 2024, $22 million in 2025, and then a final year in 2026 with a club option of $13.5 million, and that can be bought out for $2 million. So you would, if you were to go out and actually make a huge splash and bring in Sal Perez, you would have him for 2.5 years, and you would probably need to eat all of that money. Sal Perez still putting up big numbers. I mean, we watched him tie Vladdy back in 2021 with home runs at 48. The dude hits bombs in Kauffman Stadium. Can you imagine that bat in the American League East? Sal Perez, World Series champion in 2015. He's got Gold Glove behind the plate. He has won some home run titles. And my God, that bat in the middle of this order would solve so many problems for the Toronto Blue Jays. By the way, I know how off the deep end this proposal seems. That said, if you can go in and maybe you can get a guy like Scott Barlow, that shores up the bullpen incredibly well. Maybe you can get Zach Greinke, right? He's going to eat some innings. He's got that seasoned veteran presence. He's been there, done that. Probably be pretty good for some of the young guys in the bullpen and in the starting rotation. Obviously, Zach Greinke is not a guy you're going to see on the playoff roster, but helps get them there. Scott Barlow definitely is, and Salvi Perez. I know I'm in one foul swoop with one team solving all the problems. Obviously, this would be an expensive endeavor. Sal Perez is going to cost some prospect capital. I don't know if it's worth it. Sure solves a lot of the problems. So that is my question to you, the grounds crew. I am very curious on your thoughts on that. Just knowing that you could go out and get a guy who, and obviously Sal Perez would take away a lot of at-bats from Kirk. Maybe Kirk is a piece going back. Kirky under control for 3 more years, and maybe the Kansas City Royals can take a look at him and think to themselves, you know what? He came in late to spring training, maybe a little bit conditioning was maybe a little bit of a problem to start the season, started cold, slumped. Maybe they can look at 2022 and 2021 and be like, you know what? We can get Kirky back to where he was, or at least pretty darn close. You know how teams are, right? They've got all sorts of hubris thinking they can change everyone. That was the Blue Jays with Dalton Varsho, right? All the talk about Dalton Varsho was that he can't catch up with the high fastball. What did the Blue Jays do right away? They took him and tried to change his swing. Speed is bad up. Get to that high fastball, which has not worked at all, by the way. But that's teams for you, right? Organizations, they got that confidence, they got that hubris. They look at other players and they're like, you know what? I think we can fix him. So maybe that could be the case with Kansas City and Alejandro Kirk. They get a catcher for 3 years who is going to cost them absolutely nothing, right? League minimum. He's not even ARB ready. He's not even ARB arbitration. What's the word? Ready, I guess we're without Adam here to just put in simple words that my brain should come up with every single day. Anyways, so I'd love to hear from you. Drop in the comments what your thoughts on going to Kansas City and trying to make a big deal. Swing for Sal Perez, maybe Scott Barlow. Maybe you can add a couple peripheral players to help you in the outfield or wherever you may need. Sorry about the choppiness there, by the way. My computer ran out of space literally as I was in the middle of that. So I had to scramble to get it back together. Now I'm piecing 2 pieces of video together. My tech savvy ways are being tested. Can you tell Adam deals with all of this stuff normally? We're missing the big guy. Okay, we're going to move on to checking in on some of the farm system. Okay, Addison Barger was the big shining star to start the spring training rituals, the rigors of spring training. He looked really good in spring training. Addison Barger had an incredible season last year, going all the way from High A Vancouver up to Triple A Buffalo. He had an incredible season in Double A, really put himself on the map, and then had, I think, 8 games in AAA where he hit well over 300 and had a couple dingers at the end of the season last year. He started the season slow this year. He had some injury problems, wasn't able to stay on the field to begin the 2023. He is back, and he looks really good lately. Davis Schneider has put himself on the map this year. He's actually going to be, we interviewed him earlier in the summer. We're releasing that today. I know I've been teasing Davis Schneider forever. It's just been tough to get out. But anyways, long story short, that is going to be on the Walk Off YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Davis Schneider plays second base, plays third base, plays some outfield. He has been a revelation in 2023 and is a guy that we could actually see called up this season. Now, he is not on the 40-man roster, so there would need to be some moves made to give this guy an opportunity. He is showing power like he has never shown before. He continues to hit dingers, hit one just the other day in Buffalo. He is on pace to probably hit about 25-30 in AAA. Could we see him be given an opportunity this season? It's possible if there's an injury. Bad tacos go away, knock on all the wood, but it is possible. There's been a lot of talk that people would like to see Addison Barger brought up right now. I would rather see him as a September call-up. I would like to see him continue to push the organization to take a look at him. Force their hand, Addison, right? Really good July so far. Let's see how he looks in August and go from there. A quick update on Ricky Tiedemann, too. He is, of course, the top Blue Jays prospect. He has struggled to stay on the field this year, but he is back. He looks like he's healthy and ready to start rehab. He had some tightness in his left bicep, but that is all good, of course. Whenever there's tightness in a throwing arm, you never know how long it's going to take for the guy to get back, but he is headed to the Florida Complex League. So he's going to begin a rehab assignment tomorrow. That is just good news for the Toronto Blue Jays. The last time the big hyped up lefty, Ricky Tiedemann pitched was in a minor league game in May 4th. So it has been a trek for him to get back and get right. All the best to Ricky Tiedemann. Before we get out of here, I will just leave you with a quick AL East update. The Toronto Blue Jays currently sit 5.5 back of the Baltimore Orioles. Yes, those pesky Orioles have moved themselves to the front of the AL East, the top of the division. They are currently playing the Tampa Bay Rays. They're in the midst of a 4-game series. They took game 1 yesterday. Tampa Bay hopefully coming back. That would be the beautiful thing here, is if we can see a sweep and the Jays maybe go 3 for 4 in the next 4 games and gain a game on each of them. Fingers crossed. That's the dream. Anyways, long story short, this AL East still up for grabs. No one thought it was possible. I mean, you look back at the beginning of July, and I think the Orioles were 4 games back of the Rays, and the Jays were like 11. And now here we are, the Jays 4.5 back of the Rays, who are now in second place. And the Orioles sit atop the division. Who saw that coming? All right, everybody. That has been my solo episode here. Adam Mack, you were missed both on the tech end and just on your quips and quick wit. We look forward to seeing you Sunday, and we hope that everything is done moving wise. All right, everybody. Grounds crew, thank you so much. At Walk Off Podcast on Twitter, feel free to give us a follow. We actually hit 2,000 followers recently, so thank you to everyone following this dummy on Twitter. The Walk Off Podcast on Instagram. Again, Baseball Town. Yes, Locked On Blue Jays with Craig Ballard and the Walk Off. We're collabing. We're bringing you Baseball Town, a live long toss Sunday, September 10th. We've got Blake Murphy of Sportsnet coming down. We have Johnny G of Gate 14 making an appearance. We've got some other very cool guests lined up that we'll announce a little later on. So get on that. Early bird tickets on until August 1st. You save yourself $5 by doing so. Just over $20 is what the ticket's going to cost you. There's some fees and shit like that, box office fees that I have nothing to do with. But anyways, feel free to hit that ticket link. That is going to be in the comments. We hope to see you out at the live show. Again, the only way you're going to be able to participate and see this show as it happens is live. Of course, we are going to release the episode the next day, but be there. Come check it out. Toronto, we're finally going to be in your neck of the woods. Excited to work with my good friend Craig Ballard of Locked On Blue Jays. All right, everybody. There it is. We did it. We got through it. A solo episode. All the best, buddies. Buddies. All the best, gang. Cheers.